Thank you all for joining us at the Create Beautiful Intranets with SharePoint session at the All Things M365 conference. And that's a mouthful. This is our inaugural conference, and we're excited to have you here today. I'm Karen Mann. I'm the M365 Agency Administrator for NCDIT. Just a little bit about me. I have more than 20 years experience as a web and technical support specialist, both with the state and at the News and Observer. And I've been working with SharePoint since 2010. Before joining NCDIT, I was a SharePoint and Drupal administrator for DHHS, where I developed the department's intranet, the Hive, which we'll take a look at later. And before we get started, I do want to remind you that you can see our list of other sessions at the all things at it.nc.gov/allthings m365. If another session captures your attention, feel free to go ahead and register for it. So I'm going to speed through this a little bit. The PowerPoint will be available online after the conference at that page on our website. So today we're going to talk about using SharePoint to create a beautiful functional intranet for your agency. But before we get started, it's important to know a few facts about SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive. I have to thank my colleague, Rod Parrish, NCDIT's Senior Microsoft Administrator, who created, and have to ask everyone, would you please mute your microphones? Thank you. I have to thank Rod Parrish. This is his presentation. He uses it in all of his SharePoint 101 sessions. And one of his best analogies is that if Teams is a car, then SharePoint is the engine of the car. SharePoint really is what works underneath everything in Teams. OneDrive is for personal use. It's a document library that provides storage for individual users. So if we're thinking of Teams as a car and SharePoint as the engine, then OneDrive is like the glove compartment where you store all your personal items. There are a few different types of SharePoint sites. We'll look at a couple today. The first is the communications site, which is designed to push information out almost like a news website like WRAL or CNN. The second is a team site, which many of you probably use. Team sites are designed for a small number of people to collaborate. The best practice of modern SharePoint architecture is to use a structure almost like a nesting doll. Each agency has one overarching communication site, and that site is known as a hub. That hub can be thought of as the news site for your agency. Each division in that agency should have their own communication site, which that division then uses to push out information that everyone in the agency can see. Then nested within that would be the team site. So, for example, if you've got, I know almost every agency has a communications, or well, everyone has an HR division, and the best practice would be to have your hub site. Then HR would have its own communication site in which they push out information they want all employees to see, such as, return to work policies, leave benefits, that sort of thing. Then HR would have their own team site that is closed and private for them, and that's where they could collaborate on things that they don't want the rest of the agency to see. Here's a list of best practices. I won't go through them all since we do have limited time, but there are a couple that I would like to highlight. And first is that with any SharePoint site, there should be at least 2 site owners, but no more than 3. Site owners are the first line of defense when users have any sort of issue with that site. Site owners manage permissions and troubleshoot basic problems users may have. If a site owner can't solve a problem for a user, they then escalate to their own agency administrator. And I did put a list of the agency administrators, the solutions in that chat. If your agency administrator can't solve a problem, they then escalate to us at DIT. Secondly, never put any information that contains PII or PHI on a hub or division communication site. these sites are considered public. And be very careful in putting PII or PHI in general in a team site. Just make sure your team is locked down if you do that. And you would actually have to submit a request. When you're submitting your request for your team site, you'd have to submit an exception to be able to put PHI or PII on your site. We can't stress this enough. Keep your site simple, both in functionality and design. If you have a question about how to do something on your site, come to us first rather than looking for answers on YouTube. We are happy to help. And with that, I'm going to show a few sites for us to take a look at. So I did put in links in the chat to some of our better known intranets. Let me share my screen. I want to highlight a couple of these right now. First is our own intranet at DIT. And you'll see that the ones that I'm going to demonstrate have quite a few things in common. First off, they have this area up here, which is a web part known as the hero. And here this would be like your front page. This would be the news that HR or communications really wants to get out to all employees. And I should note that as far as maintaining the content on an intranet, we have found the best practice is to let either HR or communications do it, because HR really understands what employees want, and communications are probably better. Well, they definitely are better than your average tech person at writing the information that needs to go out there. For example, you could click here and you could see Secretary Weaver's message, and this is the latest message. He has not delivered his June message yet. You see some other news items down here, some featured things that we want people to see. We've got a link to our Twitter feed, and then employee resources, which are the things that people want the most. For example, links to Beacon, logos and templates, HR, and then we have a little leadership module here. So you know who's in charge, basically. And the Office of Communications actually handles, for NCDIT, handles the content of this site. One of our newer ones is the Department of Agriculture, and as you see, they are also utilizing the hero web part. They've got a quick links here, and these two web parts are actually the same. It's the quick links, only they have designed theirs a little differently. Once again, there's a news section, and they've got their leadership and also a link to their Twitter feed. The Hive was the intranet that I helped develop when I was at DHHS, again, using the hero with quick links, news, and a Twitter feed. So you see there's some consistencies here in how most of our intranets work. And here's something to note in our navigation up here. The Hive would be the hub site. If you go to administrative offices, you can go to communications. This is the Office of Communications communication site. I know that sounds a little confusing, but this is DHHS's area where they send information out to all employees. I won't click on this, but this is their team site. This is where they collaborate. So actually, I'll click on it because I don't think I can get there. Yep, I'm not in their Office of Communications, so I don't have permission to see their team site. Finally, DNCR, doing things a little bit differently, but they are using the hero. They've got a little text area. News, and they are using the event calendar. And once again, they are linking to their Twitter feed. And here are their quick links. So with that, let's see what we got next. I'm going to show you how to make some of these edits. And this is our M365 training site. This is a communications site. So if you were to request a communications site, you would get something that looks like this right off the bat. You would have the ability to click your gear icon up here. And you'll notice you see some things that they put here that you can use or get rid of. But if you click your gear icon, you can go to apply a site template and choose a different layout. And that's up to the discretion of the site owner. We give you the site and then you can take it and run with it. When you get your site, I would advise you to go ahead and click through some of these, because this isn't just filler. These are stories that Microsoft has come up with, articles on how to use your site, some tips and tricks, best practices. So for now, I'm going to show you what it's like to edit. I just click the edit button. And this is a personal peeve of mine. Once you edit, it then says republish. I don't know why it just doesn't say publish, but regardless, if you decided you didn't even want this hero web part, you can get rid of it. Because if you click over here, you can duplicate it, you can trash it, you can edit it. You can get rid of all the boxes and just have one big box. For example, you might have some major news that everyone needs to know about in your agency right now. So that can be impactful if you want one big story. But let's go ahead and edit here. I put a story. I already created another page on the back end of here. And I will add this. Let's say we want to have a message from Secretary Weaver here. You then select your image, and I have an image on I actually have uploaded an image of him already. Going to insert it. Change my alt text. And it's saved until you either republish it or discard your changes. And you can discard whatever you do until you republish. Let's change this block as well. Let's say we've got, what else do we have going on? You can actually just add a link to something. And change this image and insert. Now, let's say you think to yourself, well, the secretary's message, that's not the biggest news. People are more likely to want to know about the food trucks. So we just drag and drop and move them around. And again, if you wanted to edit this section, you wanted the food truck to be the biggest news. Boom, there it is. With your news section, you could then add links to other items. Got your events here. But let's say you want to maybe change the layout. Right now it's just one column. Let's say you want 2 columns. And maybe you want to, if you click here, you have a list of all your web parts. Let's say we want to find the Twitter feed. Right now it's defaulting to Microsoft, but if you wanted to add your own, you could do it right there. If you decide you want the events to be above the news, just drag it right here. One of my favorite web parts really is the quick links, and you can do so many things with it. And we'll add a couple of links here. Let's see, training opportunities. You can add an image to this if you'd like, or you can have an icon. You can also search stock images. Let's see, we want something that says training. Not really the type of training I'm looking for. You could also, I see we have some graphics folks on our presentation. Consult with your graphics department. Let's add that. Let's add another link to agency administrators. And if you notice it takes the title and just adds it automatically. Now let's say you want to change these up a little bit. Maybe you don't really like the way they look. You can have them appear as a grid or as buttons. This is what we saw with the yeah, Department of Agriculture. They're using buttons for theirs. And once you've gotten your page the way you like it, you would hit republish, after which you would not be able to discard your changes. You'd have to go back and re-edit at that point. Are there any questions so far? Taking a look
There
at
are several questions in the chat. Hello, my name is Sanford. Can you hear me?
Yes.
There's a couple questions in the chat, but 2 of them I think are referencing the same thing. I think Adrian had the same question as I do. So we have various contractors, stakeholders that are not state employees. that we would like to have access to the SharePoint. My specific question is, is the agency responsible for creating some kind of Microsoft guest account for them to log into? I think we do it for Microsoft. I'm not sure if it's NCID required anymore, but how does that work? What is your experience with that?
So someone who is not a state employee, really, no, it's not designed to work that way as far as the communication site. If you are a cabinet agency, then anyone from another cabinet agency can see your intranet. But if you wanted to send it to someone outside the agency, it wouldn't work that way. I see the Twitter feed. Let's see. Let's add the NCDIT Twitter here. And there it is. How can I request a SharePoint site? Here are some instructions on how to do that. There is a link. And I would say if you're not an agency administrator, check to make sure that you don't already have a hub site enabled, because you actually might have one. And Kyle, are you able to access that link? Stop sharing my screen for a second. Yes, contractors would need an NCID state email address. I mean, there are ways to get in external users. So Jerry, what agency are you with?
Oh, sorry, I was trying to unmute. I'm actually with DIT supporting DEQ, but I just wanted to clarify that for that gentleman that asked the question. You would have to have a paid M365 state subscription to access these sites.
I'm sorry, this is Sanford again. I just want clarity. We can do it. I'm hearing a yes, and I'm hearing these are the things that we need to do: an NCID, an email address, and a paid M365 subscription.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, but if you just wanted to send it to someone who doesn't work here, no, you wouldn't be able to do that. Okay. Can you please mute your mic, whoever's typing? Thank you. Any other questions? I know that was a lot to sort of cram into a small amount of time.
Hi, Karen. It's Jules. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I can't really hear you, though.
There. How's that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question. I know there was a long time ago we talked about, can we have employees when they turn on their computers first thing in the morning, open up after they sign in directly to the intranet page? Now, I wondered if there was any progress on making that happen.
We talk about that every now and then. I think the hoops that we'd have to jump through to get that to happen, because you'd have to have someone put that on every employee's browser. I mean, you could encourage people to have that as their homepage, but even if you have someone add that to every employee's browser and know what browser they're using, there's really nothing to stop them from changing it.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, no
Appreciate
problem.
it.
No problem. Any other questions? Is there anything else? We've got 5 minutes left. We can take a look at just about anything here. Well, if there are no other questions,
Hi, I just
yeah,
put
ahead.
a question in the chat. So are you able to link individual sections on a page so that if you have several different sections, you can click at the top of the page and it'll automatically take you to the section that's near the bottom? Is that a possibility?
No, not as far as I know.
Okay, thank you.
It's sort of like an anchored link. I mean, you might be able to, there is like some embed code. You might be able to sort of, there's not a web part that will do that, but if you got creative with your embed code, you might be able to do something like that. Okay.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yeah. Quick recap on how to edit. Let me share. First off, your average person will not be able to see the edit button. Only basically the site owner will see it. And let's republish this page. You will see, if you have editing access, you will see the edit button right here. You can use anchor by giving the title of a section using heading 2. Yeah, that's probably, if that's something, as far as like having an anchor tag in your text on your page so that people could go directly to a certain section, that's the best way to do it. All right, let's take a look at other questions. Katie is saying we were able to add access for some of our support group members, but it depends on how your user groups are set up. The way our intranet is set up, they have to. Katie, would you mind, since your intranet was one of the ones that we showed off because it's so beautiful, would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the thing that you have to kind of keep in mind that we've learned through this journey is you have to think about ahead of time what type of SharePoint site you want. So for example, some of our divisions have like a specific like communication type team site set up. Some have an actual hub like our zoo that then has specific areas where those divisions can go and access. So one of the things is when you're setting up your intranet, you have a pretty robust way to add user groups and who those user groups are. So that's one thing that I would definitely recommend is if you're starting this office, start getting an idea of like what things people are going to need access to and who doesn't need access, so you can have that ready to go. So our aquariums, for example, had like some friends groups that needed access to certain things. So they were able to set up user groups that allowed them to have access into that. And then, for example, our intranet is just for our specific Microsoft tenant, so only DNCR employees can get to it. And then we have specific permission groups for the document center separately. So that so some people can see it, some people can edit it, that kind of thing. So that's definitely something that you'll want to consider. Right now, you are able to, I think you can turn on and off how you want to share stuff outside of that Microsoft tenant. So like if you send it to somebody that's at like a different organization. So that really is like the main thing you have to think about when you are wanting to think of who's going to have access to this and what you want them to have access to is really nailing down your permission groups. So you can add people outside of your agency. You just need to make sure that you have those permission groups set up appropriately into what sections, because obviously you may not want to give them access to everything.
So thank you all. I've got about it's 10:30 now. Please, if you have any other questions, you can email me or reach out to me on Teams, and I am happy to help. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.